In this clip, we're going to continue to learn about the Mesh Animation Toolset in Maya and adjust the procedural animation that we've created a little bit further. So we're just going to pick up right where we left off in the previous clip. We created this really fun type of animation with these very simple sphere objects, or these half spheres, and we're kind of having them rotate. And we can go ahead and play it here, and you can see we're getting some really nice kind of fun abstract type of animation. So let's go ahead, we'll pause this and go back to frame 1. And we can go ahead and go to our outliner just real quick. So we'll go to Windows, Outliner. And if you want to get back to editing or adjusting the mesh network, let's go ahead and just hit Mesh in the outliner here, and then we can close that. And that's going to bring up all of the properties associated with that network. So let's jump back into the Mesh Signal node, which is the node that we applied to the actual sphere objects, which gives us this really cool rotation effect that we have on each one of these sphere objects. So let's go ahead and scroll down a little bit. So we adjusted the rotation. Let's keep scrolling down quite a bit and take a look at some of these different settings that we have in here, like the trigonometry settings. So you can really have fun just playing around with a lot of these settings to see the effect that it has on your animation. So let's go ahead and hit play here. And let's just adjust the step amount. And you can see as we bring it to a value of 0, we basically eliminate any of that kind of offset that's happening between the instance sphere objects. And if you remember right, we had 10 instances of the initial shape when we applied that mesh network. So the step amount kind of allows you to sort of adjust the amount of sort of offset rotation that we're getting with each one of the sphere objects. You can bring this up, you can bring it down, kind of just play around with this value to find an animation that works best for you. So it kind of comes down to a lot of sort of just experiment, trial and error of adjusting a lot of these values to kind of figure out what you think works best. So we might go to maybe something like value of 200 or so. I think that looks pretty good. And of course we can adjust that as needed. Let's go ahead and scroll down just a little bit more and take a look at this strength. So if we go ahead and dial the strength down, you can see that we've basically completely eliminated any type of movement happening on those objects. So again, as we dial up this strength, we're going to dial up the amount of movement. So you can see we're getting some really nice sort of wave patterns now on these objects, and it creates a completely different look than what we just had previously, simply by adjusting this strength value. And as we dial it up, we're getting more and more amount of movement in there. And you can really see the power of this tool for creating these more motion graphics types of animations. Again, this would be something that would be really difficult and pretty time consuming to try and hand key with traditional animation. So again, as we dial up the strength, we're really dialing up the amount of movement, the amount of rotation that each one of these objects has. And then we can also take a look at this random strength. So this is really cool. It allows us to just randomize the amount of strength that each instance object has. So you can see as we play around with this, you can see that some of the sphere objects in the middle have a lot of rotation and movement happening. And then as we go further out, there's kind of less rotation, less movement on some of those objects. And then kind of the last object we have here has quite a bit of rotation on it. So you can see using this strength value, this random strength, are really able to dial in sort of the randomness to this movement and create something kind of more haphazard, kind of just a little bit more random here with less of a pattern. But again, as we dial this back up to 1, we get something that kind of has more of a pattern to its movement. And we might bring this strength to, again, if we bring it all the way up to 1, then we get a lot of movement going on. But we'll find something maybe around a value of 0.5, I think looks pretty good. And we can go ahead and scroll back up here. Now this was just a kind of a very quick basic overview of the Mesh Animation Network, and kind of just to get your feet wet and comfortable with a way you can utilize this tool, but really there is so much you can do with this Mesh tool set in terms of procedural and motion graphics type of animation that you're going to have a lot of fun with it. Now, it also kind of depends on sort of what type of animation that you want to create. You want to create more hand-keyed type of animation, then you might not find this as useful to you. But still, there's going to be a lot of cases where you might find that you need to create something a little bit more procedural like this that would be either too difficult or simply just too time-consuming to create using hand-keyed animation. And if we just jump back into this Mesh node, you can see really the amount of options in here, and we really just scratched the surface of really just the very basics of what you can do inside of here. You can see we have a lot of different nodes here that allow us to create completely different types of procedural animation for our objects in our scene. We can go to something like add utility, and then we have even more. We have things like trails. We have an explode node, which allows us to kind of explode our geometry. There's a ton of stuff in here that you can have a lot of fun just playing around with. So I highly recommend that if you are interested in this more motion graphics type of animation, then I highly recommend sort of just experimenting with this Mesh animation network and try to create kind of more fun animations and just experiment with all of these different nodes inside of here. And we'll go ahead and just pause that real quick. And if we want to, we can even just scrub this animation to take a look kind of how this looks frame by frame. So you can see we've created a really cool but simple animation here by simply utilizing one single object to create this really cool movement. And we really kind of just scratched the surface because really this could be in a course all its own, just focusing on what you can do inside the Mesh animation toolset. All right, so I think that's going to bring us to the end of this course. We've learned a lot about Maya's animation tools along our way. We first learned about Maya's playback controls and how to playback and view an animation. And then we learned about some of Maya's animation preferences like the playback speed. And then we learned about really the foundation for all your animation, keyframes. We learned how to set keyframes, how to copy and paste keyframes, as well as how to create our very first animation. And then we jumped directly into the graph editor. We learned all about the graph editor, how to use it to really fine-tune and tweak your animations. And we also learned about the different tangent types and how to adjust your tangent handles. And then we use the time editor to create various animation clips, as well as blend between different animation clips to create a really nice transition. And then we learned about how to track our arcs with Maya's really helpful visualize tools. And then we also learn about how to animate an object that follows a specific path, something that would be really difficult to create with regular hand-keyed animation, but something that we're able to do really easily with Maya's motion path constraint. And then finally, we wrapped it all up by taking a brief look at Maya's brand new Mesh animation toolset for creating more procedural animation or more motion graphics type of animation. So I hope you guys learned a lot along your way. And thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.